Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Fox 8. My name is Abe.
And I'm Moses. So, Abe, what's the topic of discussion for today?
Well, Moses, in store today we have the release of non-violent criminals from jail. That's going to be our topic today.
Really? That sounds interesting. What do you got for us, Abe?
Well, through the excessive research I have done, I found that it costs approximately $89.91 per day to house a single Michigan inmate, whereas $79 is actually the national average per day to house a prisoner. So, I think this is a significant problem because we do spend more dollars on housing a criminal than we do in other departments that are in need of dollars like education, transportation, or construction, etc.
That's very true. So, Abe, what are the requirements for a prisoner to be released from prison early?
So the requirements distributed by the Department of Corrections under the Early Release Program provide that inmates must meet a certain criteria before they are eligible for an early release from prison. First of all, the crime committed must be a misdemeanor or nonviolent nature. The prisoner must be within a year of their sentenced release date. The offenders are required to have maintained good behavior throughout the course of their incarceration, and they must have undergone treatment courses for their offenses. In addition, the offenders must be introduced to re-entry program that will ultimately help them re-enter the public society. Finally, inmates are required to demonstrate that they will not repeat an offense once released from prison. This has been where the problem within the early release program has surfaced. It has been determined that approximately 60% of offenders reoffend within 3 years upon their release from prison, regardless of whether they served a full sentence or were released early from prison.
So, Abe, what does the opposing view think of all of this?
Well, with the opposing view, they claim that an early release from prison would, most importantly, spare a great amount of Michigan's state budget. These people firmly believe that with the help of rehabilitative and educational post-imprisonment programs, the criminals in question could ultimately learn to lead a life without criminal activity. They believe that it is completely possible to reteach criminals to be productive members of society rather than destructive deviants. Should involvement in such programs be a requirement that must be fulfilled within the terms of the early release program, advocates of the concept are assured that the criminal population of repeat offenders would be decreased, ultimately providing that a substantial amount of the Michigan state budget would be spared from the penal system. The type of rehabilitative courses provided would require some funding, however. Although this is so, it can be determined that because the funding would go toward the salaries of the education and supervisors involved in the functioning of the program, it would be a much smaller price to pay than would keeping the nonviolent criminals imprisoned. Furthermore, the director of Department of Corrections, Patricia Caruso, suggests that not only would the state save approximately $120 million for the 2012-2013 fiscal periods, but that releasing the prisoners could allow that the states to think of different ways in order to deter criminal activities. Rather than simply throwing the offenders in prison, she states that, I quote, "If we choose to spend all of our resources locking people up, even knowing that there is no correlation between how long people stay and whether or not they'll re-offend, then we are not making good decisions. We're making emotional ones." End quote.
So, Abe, what are your final thoughts on this issue?
Well, to conclude, I believe that two things could be done. One, release nonviolent criminals that could cut millions of dollars from being spent out of the budget. Those are nonviolent criminals, by the way. Or two, alter the quality of the prisons. Prisoners could be granted mattresses that are simply decent enough to provide for sleeping quality. Food selections should be limited each day rather than distributed in variety. And gym supplies should be basic rather than high quality. All of these quality adjustments would definitely impact the amount of money spent on corrections from the Michigan budget. The release of nonviolent criminals can help significantly to decrease the Michigan state budget deficit. By releasing those who do not pose a major threat to society, the state would essentially save a great deal of money in order to cut back on spending from the budget. The state has many options, and plenty of them are represented within the Michigan State Department of Corrections. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Abe.
And I'm Moses.
Thank you for your time.